Now, for various reasons, whether constitutional or dietary or behavioral, whatever it might be, people lose some of that earthy energy. And so it becomes hard to hold an embryo. And so what I do is I make things sticky. I increase that earth chi where it should be. I also do a technique that's a very classical technique for avoiding miscarriage. It's called threatened miscarriage. And I do that right from the beginning because why not? And I find that it's very helpful. It raises energy to hold the baby in place. After the insemination and transfer, I see people on a regular basis till you hear the news, whether you're successful or not, to keep that energy sticky. And then if you are successful, I see people through the first trimester because that's the most critical period. I've never had anyone have a miscarriage in all my years by seeing them every single week for the first trimester, which is a lot of cases. Now, I'm not saying I'm successful with everyone, because I'm not. But if they are successful and I see them through that first trimester, I've never had a case where it hasn't gone all the way to term. So, there's another, that 2004 study also showed that with acupuncture, the rates of miscarriage and ectopic pregnancies reduced significantly. So adding acupuncture with IVF had that benefit as well. So where are the points located? Points are located on the abdomen, about 1.5 inches below your belly button for both men and women. Another point in the midline right underneath the belly button. And then usually on the feet and the knees, around the knees, and sometimes elbows to hands. Rarely anyplace else, although there are points that are good for relaxation that I mentioned earlier over here to people who came a little early. This is called yin tongs, great relaxation point for people who are stressed out. But points are not meant to be, I practice Japanese acupuncture, which is a very gentle style, so the whole point is that you should be in no discomfort and still have these benefits. So to maximize results, I mentioned that coming in 1 to 2 months in advance of the cycle is really helpful. Two, like I said, increasing sperm counts is really essential, especially for IUIs. For IVF, it doesn't matter because they're just going to pluck a sperm out that looks the healthiest, or multiples, of course. Dietary advice that I have for you. You want to reduce salty foods, and that means sodium, but it's not just table salt. It also has to do with foods that we consider salty in Chinese medicine, which are seafood other than fish, pork products, reduced cheese even. That all of these foods are water chi, and so water chi, like I said, is not so good in terms of holding that baby up. So reducing that is important. And then increasing earthy foods that increase that stickiness in the abdomen also is helpful. And those foods are root vegetables and nuts. Any kind of nut is good. Any kind of root vegetable is good. It's essentially the opposite of the what's the beach diet? South Beach diet. You know, they tell you to avoid all the carbs. I'm telling you, there's the reason why carbs are bad from a dietary perspective is that it makes things sticky. It holds things together. So in this case, it's actually a good thing. I mentioned the stress, and I want to talk a little bit more about why that's a problem. In your bodies, you have something called the autonomic nervous system, and it has two sides to it. One is called the sympathetic nervous system, the other is called the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight part of the system. The parasympathetic is about relaxation, digestion, reproduction. The problem is that we live in a very stressed out environment. You know, 1,000 years ago it was much more physically difficult to be alive, but we didn't have all this world of stress that we have at work. I have a lot of people who come in who are high-powered, really working hard towards success in their workplace. I also have a lot of people who are care providers, who are caring for lots of little people already. And these can be stressful environments for people. Also, I'm going to talk about the care providers, why that can be also difficult. I have a lot of teachers who come in. What I have to say is that stress is your major thing that you want to focus on decreasing. It's the one thing that you have control over. And what you get here at the Strong Fertility Center or any other fertility center is a lot of information. And that information is not always helpful in terms of like being relaxed. You want it because you want to have some control of this process, because this process is really intensely out of control. So you want to have that information, but what I'm telling you is there's only two things to listen to. One is I'm canceling your cycle. You want to know that. Two is do this to be successful, do this to avoid cancellation of your cycle. Everything else is just information that you don't necessarily need for your success, right? And it can only increase your stress. So I tell people, you know, let go in one ear, process it, and let it go out the other ear, because what you want is relaxation. You want the doctors and the nurses to be stressed out, because that's their job, is to focus on all the details. Your job is not to focus on the details, because this is a cellular process. This is not one that you have control over. You know, this is, from my perspective, this is a faith process. That's where you can put your focus on, is that, you know, you have no control of what's happening on a micro level, but you do have control over your stress and your frame and your outlook and your perspective. Another thing I say is nurture yourself like crazy. So if you're going through this process, nurturing is that same thing as earth chi. And so I see a lot of teachers, I said, a lot of care providers, they're giving a lot of nurturing out already. People who are kind of the nurturers of the family, I see. People who are constantly giving this energy, this earth energy out, and not necessarily receiving enough of it. So this is the time where you can just be like, okay, this is my time. If I like going to cafes, I'm going to cafes. I like reading my books, I'm going to read my book by the water. Whatever it is that brings you a feeling of nurturing, now is the time to do that, because it's going to also help you relax, but it's also going to help build this energy that in Chinese medicine is great for fertility. I also want people to frame their perspective on their fertility as one that's going to be ultimately successful. I want people to come in and be like, this is going to be the successful cycle. It's hard to do, especially if you had a lot of unsuccessful ones, but the reason for that is that it's really setting you up for being relaxed, hopeful, positive, raising your energy instead of dropping it. This is all good things for Chinese medicine. It's also good for you, for your spirit, for your sense of well-being, because if you're coming in thinking about all the failures, then it's really going to be heavy on your soul. So I want people to come in, and I find that when people do think, okay, this is the successful one, it tends to be true. When people come in to talk to me in person, I give them another sheet that has additional points of information. And one of them, I don't know how many people here have read The Secret. I hate that book. It's a horrible, horrible book, The Secret. But I really actually find that people who follow some elements of its principles of being positive about what's going to happen, that tends to be more successful than coming in and being like, didn't work, it's not going to work. I'm only coming in because I feel like I have to. That's not a successful kind of mindset. A successful mindset is, you know, I'm open to it. I want people to understand their anatomy. A lot of people come in, they don't really understand the anatomy of sex. The last time you had a sex talk was a long time ago, and it wasn't a very detailed one. They've done movies where they've shown what happens during sex, during orgasm for men and women. And they show that the cervix during orgasm does this motion. It's like a hand grabbing. And the whole purpose of there is, if the sperm is there, it's grabbing something and pulling it in. If the sperm is not there, it's grabbing nothing. So what we tend to do as adults is the wrong way of having sex, essentially, which is we tend to try to please the female partner first, which is not always true, but often the case. And so if that's true, the orgasm is happening, no sperm. They've done studies showing that if the sperm is already there, the chance of success for fertility is much higher.